Elgar?
Yes.
And you live at Briar Cottage, Haley Hill, Fulchester?
Yes.
You will have to speak a little louder than that. Are you not feeling well, Mr. Elgar?
I feel all right, my lord.
A few moments ago, Mr. Elgar, before you came to the witness box, you seemed distraught. In fact, you appeared to be weeping. Could you tell the court why?
But it would be very... That would be very difficult.
I must ask you to try. What was it that so upset you?
It was just... I suppose it was the surprise, the shock of realizing that I was being betrayed. I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that such a vicious lie could be told by someone who for so many years had been my partner and my dear friend.
The lie you're referring to being...
That I said the shop could go up in flames for all I cared.
Yes, now, do you remember the conversation in which you were supposed to have made that remark?
Yes, it was after I'd shown him the letter from the landlords offering to renew the lease at a very much higher rent. I said I wasn't going to sign the new lease, and the shop could go to blazes for all I cared.
You said the shop can go to blazes for all I care.
Yes.
Meaning what precisely?
Well, meaning rather than pay the exorbitant rent they were asking, I'd give up having the shop. I'd quit the premises.
You mean find another shop?
No, I was thinking of giving up having a shop altogether. I was considering putting up a sign at my mother's cottage at Haley Hill and running the business from there.
Isn't that rather far from the centre of town?
Yes, but there would be a fair amount of passing motor trade.
The shop can go to blazes for all I care. Now, you were certain that this was the phrase you used and that it could not have been misunderstood by Mr. Stroud to mean that you were contemplating setting fire to your shop.
I'm quite certain that was the phrase I used, and I'm quite certain that Mr. Stroud did not misunderstand me.
Now, Mr. Elgar, would you please tell the court what your movements were on the evening of Saturday, the 22nd of September last?
My movements? Yes. I shut up shop soon after 6.
That was your normal closing time?
Yes, any time between 5:30 and 6, depending on whether there was a customer.
Was there that evening?
Yes, there were two. A young couple who'd been browsing around.
Did they buy anything?
No, but they were interested in one or two pieces, and they said they might come back on Monday after thinking it over the weekend.
But, of course, by Monday the shop was permanently closed.
Yes, it was all boarded up.
So that young couple, they were the last customers at your shop. Did you notice anything about them?
Well, they seemed to know quite a bit about antiques.
Did they, whilst browsing, go into the back room to look at the furniture kept there?
Yes.
Did you accompany them there?
Yes.
Did you happen to notice if either of them were smoking?
Smoking? Or I can't... No, if they were, I'm afraid I didn't notice.
Presumably there were ashtrays about the place.
Oh, yes, several ashtrays.
Do you smoke yourself?
No.
So these ashtrays, they would have been for the customer?
Yes.
My lord, I do believe my learned friend is overextending both himself and the indulgence of the court.
Oh, in what way, Mr. Parsons?
One moment we're hearing about two apparently nameless people in the shop that evening before closing time. Yes. Then we're asked to consider where either of the two people smoked or not. Yes. From there we go on to the presence of ashtrays for customers. My lord, my learned friend is attempting to put into the minds of the jury the notion that this fire was started by the cigarette from a careless customer. Yes. In other words, he's putting up a smoke screen.
Yes, well, I'm sure the jury won't be blinded by the smoke screen, Mr. Parsons, and I'm sure also that they will be aware that no evidence has yet been offered that anyone was smoking in the shop on the night of the fire. Mr. Lotterby, the names of this young couple who, the defendant says, were in the shop just before closing time are not known.
No, my lord.
No. Any attempt made to trace them?
Oh, yes, indeed, my lord. On two occasions, advertisements were placed in the personal column of the Fulchester News, but with no result.
Well, I see. Yes, well, please continue.
So, when the young couple left, you locked up the shop just after 6, and then?
I went home.
Yes. How did you travel?
In the van.
How long was the journey?
About 20 minutes.
20 minutes. Your mother, was she at home?
Yes. I cooked the supper for us.
You cooked the supper?
Yes, I usually do the cooking, and my mother does the washing up.
I see. Please go on.
Then we watched television.
You watched television for the rest of the evening?
Yes.
Until when?
Well, until we had a phone call. Well, two phone calls, one after the other, saying the shop was on fire.
Now, what time was that?
At 9:20.
Which time you'd been home how long?
Oh, nearly 3 hours.
Yes. And then?
I drove to Manning Street, to the shop. The place was still on fire. There was under control by then. There were crowds of people and fire engines. That part of the street was cordoned off. For a long while, I couldn't get near the shop. I just stood there amongst the crowd, watching.
And afterwards?
Well, it was nearly midnight before I was allowed into the shop to inspect, to look at what was left of the contents. There was nothing, virtually nothing. It was all gone. Everything that was left was black and charred, still smoking, some of it. Even in the main part of the shop, there wasn't anything left that wasn't charred beyond recognition. Just the odd bit of metal here and there, drawer handles, face of a clock. It was all just debris. It took several days to clear it all out.
Now, Mr. Elgar, the court has heard the evidence given by Station Officer Roy Pettit of the Fulchester Fire Brigade concerning the presence in the back room of the shop of a large can, a 5-gallon drum believed to have contained paraffin. Now, can you tell us anything about that? Did you know it was there?
Yes, I bought it.
When did you buy it?
I'm not sure. About a week before the fire.
About a week before the fire, you bought a can of paraffin and you placed it in the back room of the shop.
Yes.
Why?
Well, it was the end of September and the weather was beginning to get chilly. And that room's always cold, never gets any sun. Also, it was damp, which is very bad for antique furniture. Now, in the past, I've always had 2 electric radiators in the back room, as in the front part of the shop. They're very expensive to run, and last winter, in order to economize, I intended having the electric radiators only in the main part of the shop and a paraffin heater in the back room.
Had you yet purchased the paraffin heater?
No, but I'd looked at several models, and I wasn't sure which one to buy, or whether I'd need 1 or 2 in such a large room.
What was this room used for?
Well, for storing furniture that wasn't on display.
Did you keep anything else there?
Packing materials,
Such as?
blankets, ropes.
How
so on.
many blankets?
About a dozen.
And were there always blankets in that room?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Elgar, you said it took several days to clear the debris from the premises. Was it then that you got round to making out your insurance claim?
Yes, it was 4 or 5 days after the fire that the insurance claim arrived. But I had already on the Sunday, the morning after the fire, scribbled down a list of, well, while it was still fresh in my mind, every item that I had in the shop, whether a valuable antique or just an ordinary piece of furniture like my desk. Now, it was a long list, several sides of foolscap. When I came to fill in the claim form, there wasn't room, so I typed the list separately to be attached to the form.
You were copying the list you had scribbled down the morning after the fire?
Yes. And when I was about halfway through, I suddenly came on 5 items which shouldn't have been there. There was a rather fine Pembroke table, a William and Mary marquetry chest, a set of 6 Hepplewhite chairs, a Queen Anne bureau, and a Sheraton sideboard.
Now, why shouldn't these items have been there?
Because they weren't in the shop at the time of the fire.
Where were they?
In my van.
Now, why were they in the van?
Well, I hadn't unpacked them yet. I'd only had these articles for about 2 days. I'd been down to Salisbury, and I had to clear a space for them. I'd meant to do it on that Saturday evening before closing, but that young couple were in the shop for nearly an hour.
But why, if they're still in the van, had you included them on the original list you had scribbled down the morning after the fire?
I don't know. It's an extraordinary error. I suppose I just scribbled down quickly every item I had in my possession. And I suppose I was still, well, in a sort of state of shock.
Understandably. So a few days later, when you were typing out the insurance claim, you came across these items on the original list.
Yes. For a long time, I just stared at them. I found myself strangely excited because I realized that those items which should have been in the shop at the time of the fire, which might so easily have been in the shop, were still in my van. And I realized that nobody else in the world knew that they were there.
So what did you do?
What I did was the most foolish, the most wrong thing I've ever done in my life. I went on typing the list, including those items. Then I quickly filled in the claim form, I signed it, I dashed out, and I caught the midday post. And all the time I was saying to myself, I've been paying insurance premiums for years. I've never made a claim. The insurance company's made a lot of money out of me, and a few extra thousand on this claim won't hurt them very much. I know what I did was very, very wrong, and I have bitterly regretted it.
Mr. Elgar, you have already pleaded guilty to that offence. Are you also guilty of having set fire to your shop?
No. No, I am not.
Thank you, Mr. Elgar.
Now, Mr. Elgar, you said that in the morning after the fire you scribbled down a list of all the items in the shop that were either destroyed or damaged, and then several days later you typed up a copy of this list to send with your insurance claim. Is that right?
Yes.
And when you sat down to type out the list for the insurance claim, you added 5 valuable items you knew had not been destroyed. Now, there was no error in this, was there? It was a cold, calculated piece of deception, wasn't it?
Yes, I've admitted that.
Yes, I know. I just wanted the jury to be quite clear on that point. Now, can you tell us exactly where these 5 very valuable pieces were in the interim period between the fire at the shop and you making out your insurance claim?
In my van.
But they were still in the van several days after the fire.
Yes.
Why was that?
There was nowhere else to put them. The shop had been gutted.
Yeah, well, what about your home, the cottage? I mean, wouldn't that have been a more suitable place for 5 valuable antiques rather than the back of a van?
There was no room for them at the cottage.
No room for them? But earlier you told the court you were thinking of putting a sign outside the cottage and selling antiques from there.
Yes, but that would have meant my mother and I clearing all our things out of the large room and various structural alterations.
Yes, but isn't it near the mark, Mr. Elgar, to say that the reason those items remained in your van and had remained in your van ever since your return from Salisbury is because that was the best place to conceal them?
Well, afterwards, yes.
Now, what do you mean by afterwards?
After I'd filled in the insurance claim.
After you had filled in your fraudulent insurance claim, you kept them in the van because that was the best place to hide them.
Yes.
Yes. And that's why you kept them in the van all along, isn't it? You never put them in the shop because you knew exactly what was going to happen.
No.
You knew that the shop was going to catch fire, and you knew...
No,
And you knew you were going to add these items to your insurance claim, and that's why they never left your van from the moment you bought them.
No, that's not true.
No? But they did leave your van.
No, I'm saying that's not the way it happened.
Will you please tell the court when those items finally did emerge from concealment in your van? Was it when you drove to London and delivered them to a dealer with instructions for them to be sold privately?
Yes.
Yes. Now, when was that?
You mean the date?
Yes, the date.
The 27th of September, I think.
The 27th. Now, according to my reckoning, that would be a week after you bought them and 5 days after the fire. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, tell me, Mr. Elgar, did your mother know about the presence of those antiques in the back of the van?
No.
Well, didn't you tell her you'd been to Salisbury to buy antiques?
Yes, of course I did.
Well, where did you say they were?
I didn't say where they were.
Wasn't your mother interested? I mean, didn't you tell her you had just bought 5 very valuable antiques worth several £1,000s?
I didn't even tell her what they were.
Ah! You didn't even tell her what they were. Well, that's very surprising, considering their value.
Look, my mother has nothing whatever to do with this.
No, I'm quite
even
sure you kept her well out of it. Did your mother know you bought those items 2 days before
No,
your shop went up in flames?
I
Did she know they were still sitting out there in the van?
I didn't tell
Did you
my
know you
mother-
were going to add them
No.
to your insurance claim? No, because if she had, she would only too easily have guessed that you had set fire to the shop yourself.
No.
No! No!
Yes, yes.
Yes, what?
I did. I set fire to the shop.
My lord,
leave me
might I
alone,
ask for an
please.
adjournment?
Leave
My
me
client has
alone.
been under great strain all last week, and his mother is in hospital and may not be able to
Mr.
appear as a
Lotterby.
witness.
My lord.
Yes, yes. I think I will adjourn now.
All stand.